Hi guys, Sean here from digiDirect. You're going to have to excuse my voice a little bit today. I'm just getting over a cold. But today we're going to be talking about the new Sigma 70-200mm f2.8 OS sports lens. Now this is an exciting one because a 70-200mm lens is a staple in an enthusiast or pro kit. And Sigma, this is not their first crack at this type of lens, but they haven't updated it since 2010, and this new version is now part of their global vision lineup of lenses, which, as you probably know, have been almost exclusively exceptionally high quality lenses, often at lower prices than their first-party competitors. And for that reason, a lot of people are excited about this new 70-200. So without any further ado, let's jump in and take a look. So the lens is available in both Canon and Nikon mount, and as mentioned, it carries Sigma's sports designation, which they reserve for high-performance lenses, and we can see the S badge on it here. Physically, it matches the look of the rest of the Global Vision lenses, which I think is a very sleek and modern design. The construction on this is rock solid. Feels very high quality. The rubberized focus and zoom rings are great. The whole thing is weather sealed, which is an important point because their 2010 version of this lens was not weather sealed, which was a big complaint about it. We have a focus distance meter here and 3 different focus hold buttons, which means that you can always access one of them regardless of how you're gripping the lens. There's a tripod collar here that you can adjust the position of, and the foot actually has a built-in Arca Swiss compatible plate, so you can put that directly on a tripod without needing a separate quick release plate. The lens has an 82mm filter thread, and it also does come with a locking lens hood, and it also features 4 switches on the side here. This lets you control autofocus, manual override, focus distance limiter, and the type of image stabilization. The last one here is custom settings. So you can put this lens and edit it using the Sigma USB dock to assign different settings to the C1 or C2 toggles. The only drawback I can think of the build here is that this is not the lightest lens out there. Now, 70-200mm lenses are big lenses in general, but at 1.8 kilograms, this Sigma one is even a little bit heavier than the Canon and Nikon versions, which are 1.5 and 1.4 kilograms. You know, I shoot a lot on mirrorless cameras these days, and chucking this on a 5DSR was a lot heavier than I'm used to lugging around. But for pros who are used to large lenses like this probably won't be too much of a concern, but it is a little bit heavier than the Canon and Nikon versions. So let's get right down to brass tacks. How is the image quality on this lens? Happily, the answer is that it is fantastic. Not too much of a surprise there. These Sigma Global Vision lenses have universally had exceptional image quality. This trend continues on the 70-200mm. It's super sharp right in the center of the frame, even out to the corners, and even if you're shooting wide open at f2.8. It's a very good thing because it did have a high bar to stack up against, because Canon and Nikon's 70-200mm lenses are regarded as extremely sharp lenses as well, but this Sigma can definitely compete with that. I mentioned that f2.8 aperture. Of course, that is a big feature on this lens as well. It's going to let you do 2 things with that aperture. The first is to shoot in lower light conditions, because the wider aperture is going to let in more light. The other thing it's going to let you do is shoot within a lot of nice shallow depth of field, particularly when you're shooting at some of the longer focal lengths. So here's a shot where I've got f14. Now let's compare that to shooting at f2.8. You can see the huge amount of bokeh there that really isolates the subject from the background. Bokeh quality is something that's a little bit subjective, but to my eye, I really like it. It's nice, a pleasing and very smooth look. Definitely something that portrait shooters are going to get a lot of mileage out of, because you can definitely get a really nice portrait look to this lens as well with that shallow depth of field. Let's touch on autofocus briefly here. Now, the autofocus performance is going to be more of a function of the camera body that you're using rather than the lens itself, but the lens does have to be fast enough to keep up with some of the faster focusing systems on the market. Luckily, the Sigma again provides here, it's a very fast responding lens. Can definitely keep up with some of those faster autofocusing systems. You can definitely use it for more demanding shooting styles like action and moving subjects and so on. Note it also has a minimum focus distance of 1.2 meters. The lens does have Sigma's optical stabilization system in here, which provides about 4 stops of stabilization on this lens. That's important with the longer lens like this, because the longer the lens is, the more you're going to introduce handheld shake from there. The stabilization system is important to combat that. Now, there are 2 stabilization modes. The first is just for general use, and the number 2 is for panning. If you're going to be, typically sports uses that a lot as subjects move across the frame. Now, if you are going to be shooting handheld video, especially at the longer focal lengths, you might still want some kind of support, because you can still see there is some movement, but considering we're at 200mm handheld, especially considering the weight of the lens, it's a pretty good performance. And speaking of video, the lens is quite well suited for that as well. All of its strength in still shooting carries over to the video shooting aspect as well. And the manual focus ring on the lens is quite responsive and quite easy to rack focus with. Now, the last thing I haven't mentioned yet about the lens is its price point. So here in Australia, this lens is going for a little bit under $2,000, which puts it about $1,000 less than the Canon and Nikon alternatives. Now, this is a big deal because that really increases the attractiveness of the lens and makes it a much better value proposition than some of these other first-party alternatives. Overall, this is an exceptional quality lens. It outputs fantastic image quality for both stills and video. The f2.8 aperture gives it fantastic shallow depth of field and low light performance. The autofocus performance and optical image stabilization is both very well done. The lens is built like a tank, and all of this is at a price point lower than Canon and Nikon's alternatives. Now, the only thing I could really point to as a negative about this lens is the weight. As mentioned, it is about 20% heavier than Canon and Nikon's lenses, so expect a little bit of extra weight when you're using this lens. For most people, though, I don't think that's going to be a significant negative. I think we're going to see a lot of people using this lens. It's going to be very, very popular. Now, the lens will be out soon. You can pre-order it now on our website at www.digidirect.com.au, or you can do so in store as well. We have stores in the Sydney CBD, Bondi Junction, Miranda, the Brisbane and Melbourne CBD, and Cannington, Western Australia, which is just outside the Perth CBD. Thanks, guys. Take care.